The Means to an End by It's / Kingston on AO3. Summary. There was the sound of clothes ruffling, boots scuffing, yet not a single sound of exertion. Even Bakugou would groan as he climbed the ignominious tower side, along only by vines and chirping brooks. Whoever this was didn't seem bothered. The thing, yes, no God-fearing human moved so effortlessly within the shadows like that, entered in through the window. Uraraka aimed herself with a glass jar, silently praying it was heavy enough to impact damage. You let the prince try, but I can't? Pray tell, why would a brave knight or a prince climb my tower so late in the evening? Uraraka didn't loosen her hold on the jar. Excuse me? She extended the candle until she could see the fire reflected back into the stranger's eyes. Yellow, strange enough, was the color Uraraka was faced with. Because it's so much easier to move without the light following behind me, the stranger said. I'm not the brave knight or a prince you talk, though. Or, Princess Uraraka Ochaka was sent to live in the tower years ago. Her only chance of freedom lies with the prince who will save her. Yet the rogue who appeared at her doorstep, however, socially incorrect, is quite tempting. Episode 1. Chapter 1. Another useless day. Princess Uraraka sighed as she pulled herself from her bed, tumbling across the wooden floor. Her light pink nightgown dragged across the floor as she walked to the window. Though it didn't flung up any dust or catch any nails that peeked up loosely from the floor, Uraraka had 13 years to practice maintaining her tower, and not a day went to waste. Well, in the grand scheme of things, more than 6,939 days had gone to waste. But Uraraka digressed. She threw open the window, considered launching herself from it and aiming for the little pond near her tower, as she did every morning, and walked away. With the new light of the morning sun guiding her movements, Uraraka pulled a can from the cabinets near the door and tossed it onto the table. It rolled and fell off the other side. But that door, that wretched door, it had been spawned by the mind of the foolish prince who climbed the tower every month to deliver her food and water. Bakugou Katsuki, her own brother, though not by means of blood, was prone to every mean, spiraled trick in the book. He had towered a stack of eggs, water, and pigments up the tower one day. A smirk settled across his face. He ushered Uraraka to the top floor, made sure she couldn't see him, mix up egg tempera, and fashion a painting from them. Yet Uraraka welcomed the company. No matter how many grunts and eye rolls, her rummaging was answered with. After being pestered several months in a row, he finally gave his answer as to why he hadn't helped her down a single time. Because the prince that saves you from this ferocious tower is to take your hand in marriage. You're my friend, but there are lines I will not cross for the sake of both of us. He had said. His glare never left the pantry that he'd stalked when he spoke. That was when they were 12, before Bakugou had discovered his talents for manipulating the color oats adults had forbidden him from using, and before Uraraka started trying to climb down on her own. She picked up the jar, a rush of air leaving her lungs in relief. It wasn't cracked, at least. She unscrewed the lid and picked up a spice and dish. Apple chunk. It was always fresh and warm when Bakugou delivered them. Uraraka always opened the lid of the first one she could get her hands on. The two of them would climb the stairs to the upper levels of the tower and head to the shonen window, sitting on the windowsill, legs dangling out the edge of the vertical integral drop. They'd take turns plucking out bits of fruit. It was peaceful. Uraraka found those moments. She often looked back on them, with sharp claws of solitude latched onto her heart, threatening to pierce it and leaving her bleeding out, alone again. At the same time, those moments were the barn of her tower life, a permanent reminder that while Bakugou could come and go as he pleased, Uraraka would be trapped here. Looking down from the top of the tower was dizzying in many ways than one. Uraraka wondered, on occasion, what her chances were of surviving the fall. Climbing down the tower didn't prove as effective for her as it did Bakugou. Whether it was due to her lankier figure or the muscles that adorn his beanpole build, the prince scrambled up and down the tower like he was born to do such a thing. Uraraka had watched him come and go. His hands clutched the sole white bricks of his feet sliding down the edges. She'd seen the toll it took on the bottom of his boots, noted how each time he came back, they were repaired. They never talked about his work, but there was only so much a prince was supposed to do when it came to physical labor. Uraraka dropped onto her bedside, trying to force the thoughts away. Bakugou couldn't be back for another 2 weeks, but the sweetly spiced fruit had her wishing he was here to share it with her, even if he hardly spoke. The presence of another human in her space was undeniable improvement. He had some choice words for such a notion, one that no good noble had business saying, or so Uraraka had heard once from Bakugou as he paced their tower floor, mocking his mother's words. Ranting was truly the only time he spoken freely, letting the angered curses fall from his lips with adornment. There was a noise outside, down at the bottom of her tower. Uraraka jolted, dropped the handmade jar roughly on the table, hoped it hadn't busted or shattered, and ran to the window. Her eyes snapped to the only thing out of place in her sprightly yard, a horse, solid white and well-groomed. Nothing like Bakugou's brown-spotted mare, who had little issue with stomping through the mud on rainy days. By the light of sun now pulling itself over the top of the distant structure tree, Uraraka could make out the shape of a young man on the horse's back. It only made sense after all. This such a quiet, still horse wasn't the wild one, but a well-behaved gelded. Thrill built up in her heart, her voice doing the same in her throat. She was ready to call out to him, to finally get out of her tower. The young man hopped from the horse's back in a fluid motion. He landed with both feet in the deep puddle, one Uraraka had seen Bakugou specifically avoid during the wet season. Uraraka raised a brow. Her hopes were dashed before the man could even yelp and jump from the puddle, kicking his boots and muttering something at the ground. Wonderful. Not wanting to be taken as ungrateful, Uraraka plastered the largest smile she could muster across her face and waved down at him from the window. In truth, Uraraka was incredibly excited at the prospect of leaving her tower. Less so at the forced marriage that would follow, but leaving her tower was one of the only goals she has held since she was a child. The other were all the standard things Bakugou had talked about and taken for granted. Picking apples and oranges, breathing the fresh air and walking across old dirt roads and gravel paths. And as much as she hated to admit the cruel fate bestowed upon her, she wanted to fall in love. Yet a loveless marriage was all she saw ahead. "Excuse me," Uraraka called down to him nonetheless. The young man looked up, blushing like mad, and approached the tower's base. "Princess," he began, his green curls bounce around his face, framing it. A shadow darker than any boy should seem to follow him around, though not attached. Like Bakugou, he wore no helmet, but he was lacked the herald's chest piece the other man always wore. Instead, this green-haired stranger wore a double button down the front. Uraraka could see the glint of a rapier fastened on his left hip. "I've come to free you from the tower and take you back to my kingdom, Yue." "A prince?" Uraraka murmured. "I've awaited your arrival, brave prince. Might I know my savior's name?" He gave a solid nod and stepped up to the wall again. "My name is Midoriya Izuku, son of King Yagi of Yue. And you, princess?" "I am Uraraka Ochako, daughter of the King Uraraka of Mil," she replied. Bakugou made no effort to ask why she was up there or how long had it been the case. Instead, he studied the brick wall as a scholar would a precious new tomb. After a moment, he gripped at it, his leather gloves finding purchase in the crevices worn from Bakugou's travels and nearly 20 years of weathering. He seemed to have trouble hoisting himself up the first few bricks. With his heavy-looking boots and gloves that weren't tight enough to stop his fingers from slipping from their slots, it was no wonder why. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Uraraka was curious to know if the man ever knew how to wield the weapon so proudly hung at his waist. He seemed to have manners, and he knew how to ride his kindling, so Uraraka didn't consider him too bad off. Watching him fight to flung himself up the tower was responsible for pity growing in Uraraka's stomach. Had Midoriya come here specifically to help her, or was she a new find on the map he was charting? Uraraka wondered if he was even privy to the reason she was here. A flash of darkness between the prideful spruce trees caught her eyes. It was only for a second, likely one of the ducks that frequent her pond, startled by the new arrival and not quite ready to return home. "Princess, have you a clue how to reach your tower's summit?" Midoriya asked. His voice was soft, like the meteor wood Uraraka's favorite winter coat was crafted from. The stark contrast from her brash brother generated a curiosity in her. Who was Midoriya Izuku? What was his life like? What did he enjoy doing? "My closest friend climbs a tower to deliver my meals monthly. This is the only way I've seen accessible." Uraraka seemed regretfully. If he couldn't make the journey up alone, how was he expected to return down with her safely? For the love of all that was holy, if he couldn't get up to begin with, Uraraka wouldn't be allowed to come down and venture the world. Or more accurately, she supposed, venture alongside him, back to the castle where she'll be living. Soon after, she'd be expected to rear children, a subsidable heir for Midoriya's. She was a tad less regretful now, despite how selfish that sounded. Midoriya said. He stepped away from the wall. "I shall return tomorrow morning, prepared to rescue you, Princess Uraraka, myself alone, without my royal guard." "Of course," Uraraka said. She gave a smile down at the man. He looked up at her, returning in a long, glowing look of his own. "I shall await your return." With the sun fully over the tower now, the shadows were harsher against the dirt. Midoriya mounted the gilding and turned it, presumably back to the way he came. Uraraka would have to reference the large map on her wall. She hoped its territories hadn't changed so much as to make the map useless. Bakugou would have pointed out something of the sorts when he was here, Uraraka reasoned. Save for the consulting the map about the location of Yue's kingdom, a kingdom large and self-sufficient, if the freely stretched fields and lakes within the safe walls were any indication, the rest of Uraraka's days passed in the same sluggish manner as it always did. She pulled a well-loved book of poetry from her shelf and took a seat at the ordained-carved dinner table to read. It was a shame that the world was privy of such a beautiful piece of woodworking. Uraraka supposed it was just as trapped here as she was. The light grew dimmer and dimmer as the moon showed its face, seeming to bask in the inky pool behind it. Stars shone around the sky, like torches Uraraka could sometimes catch glowing far, far away from the festivals. Bakugou had angrily recounted a few details of them after hours of pressure, though it was more obvious to Uraraka that he was all too bothered by her questions. After all, he always came back himself, rather than sending a servant of the kingdom. Bakugou was as much as a prince as Uraraka was a princess. Perhaps more. She stood from her chair, not feeling like lighting a candle to continue her reading, and shelved her poetry collection. Uraraka, still in the nightgown she had worn that morning, considered going to sleep, with the wooden shutter left wide open. The night seemed as though it would be cool, as it tended to be during this time of year, although her wooden jacket and lean sheets would provide enough courage to keep her warm. Uraraka worried for the stability of her floors if the clouds blessed the valley with rain that night. It would sure to leak in without the shutters blocking, the worst of the elements. She did good to close them for tonight, perhaps even laid down a towel at the window's base. Firstly, she confirmed the upper floors shuttered or perfectly latched. If they blew open in the night, not only would the hoarse banging wake Uraraka from her slumber, but the wood would also absorb the water. Having her floors rot away beneath her feet was not good at all. Failing, though, was not the ideal way to leave, though Uraraka considered such a thing if Midoriya didn't return post-haste. With a huff, she retrieved the tinder box from her bedside drawer. A candle sat at the table. She'd have to light it now. She'd waited far too long to shut the shutters, and now the sun no longer provided any assistance. picking up the flintstone and fire sticker and the tinder box and striking them together. Her aim was to get the spark to fly into the clar cloth of the tinder bottom. Bakugou was much more proficient at this than Uraraka, and despite him showing her how to do it plenty of times, it still took her a number of minutes to get it started. The man just seemed to have a knack for making things spark, stumbling down from the pair of items. After some coaxing and gentle blowing, the clar cloth caught and nurtured a spark. Acting before it extinguished, Uraraka moved the embers onto her wooden splint and held it up to the candle's wick. The clar cloth was saved from the embers by a danger as to ensure its presented another use. She picked up the candle by the holder and started up the stairs. The small flame flickered about, twisting at the will of the drafts that screwed across the cracks of her tower. Uraraka shuttered the shutters by means of the wooden latch once she reached the top, then headed back down the stairs. She moved to the shutters of the base floor, gliding out the moon. It wasn't free of cloud cover, as has happened many recent nights. Dark clouds tumbled over the moon, drifting like unwatched children. It would rain that night, Uraraka was almost positive. She placed her candle down at the window sill, and, by the light of the flames, moved to fasten the shutters. Uraraka sprinted, watching the side of her tower carefully. It must have been later than she imagined, for she was seeing things where they were not, shadows casted without an owner. No, Uraraka thought. That's not correct. Something lurks. Oh my god, I love me a good, I would call this royalty AU, kind of. It is a royalty AU. Non-modern times royalty AU. There's no quirks in this, clearly, but this reminds me of a fic that I'm writing for my kingdom. It is also set, not exactly in the 14th century, but is set in the oldie days, as I like to call it. I don't actually have a set time frame for that one. It's just in the back days, and their dialect is so hard. I want to know, Kingston, how hard is it to write their dialect? Because I know for a fact it is so fucking hard for me. I've had to get a translator. Oh my god. Pray tell is something that I've been saying on a regular basis now. It should not be something that I say on a regular basis, but it is. I just want to know your writing process, because I know I'm writing a fic that's set around those times, right? And it's a royalty kind of AU. I'm a sucker for this type of thing. I am so excited for this. This is super cute. And obviously there's going to be homophobia. I know in mine, I didn't want to deal with homophobia, so I made it so homophobia isn't necessarily a thing that happens, right? So it's not historically accurate on my end, mainly because I don't want to be historically accurate, okay? Because I want the arranged marriage, please and thank you. Anyways, it's not historically accurate, but this is... Hold up. Did I make that one I need to think of something. Hold on, give me a second. I just realized something. And if I didn't, I swear to God, if I didn't and I accidentally just did, oh my god. Okay, so far there's only one chapter. Her so corkless, worry. No, I did not make this an ABO. So why did I think I made this an ABO? I didn't. So please do tell me why I thought I did. I might do it. I might just update this chapter. I'll do it. Kingston, tell me, what do you think I should do? Should I make my royalty AU an ABO? Omega, Beta, and Alpha? It will change literally nothing in the story. Other than the fact that Izuku and Hitoshi could possibly actually have kids. That is literally the only thing it would change. It would change literally nothing else. Nah, I won't make it an ABO. I think I already have one ABO. I don't need two. I have an obsession with ABO, okay? For someone who can't smell, I have an obsession with ABO. I just like the idea of it, okay? Sometimes I like the idea of it. Okay? Fucking sue me. Should I make it an ABO? I don't know. Should I? Okay? Should? Pray tell, should I? Pray tell, young fellow brethren, shall I make this ABO For I shall yes? Please? No? Maybe? No? Should I? I don't know. Should I? It would not be that hard. It would then explain why, you know, gay relationships would be okay. I don't know. I'll think about it. I'll flip a coin. Anyways, onto the actual fic, this fic that you're writing, Kingston. I am super excited and stoked for it. I'm so happy. I really like that type of storylines. They're so, well, I love royalty AUs so much. I love Toga Chaco, and I can't wait to see how this is gonna go. I'm guessing that Shadow was Toga, and I'm gonna take a guess that Toga comes and goes and visits Uraraka, and it's like a slow burn that way where like they slowly fall in love. But then Midoriya comes in and he's like, I finally rescued you, young maiden. And Uraraka's like, great, amazing, now we are to wed. Oh my god, yay. But like, Toga, you know? And it's gonna be like this whole rapture of like, you know, she has to choose between her princess duty and her heart. I can't wait! I'm so excited. Is this actually gonna be angsty, Kingston? Please tell me, Kingston. Did you actually make it angsty, or did you not make it angsty? I need to know, Kingston. Did you make it Kingston angst, Echo angst, other angst, or no angst? I need to know. On a scale of how angsty is it? How angsty is it? Please tell me, Kingston. Anyways, I think that's all. I like your going from reading your older works to your newer works is you have a really changed. I don't know if it's just this fic. I think maybe you've used a lot more sophisticated words in this fic, which makes sense. It is 13th century type of time set and stuff like that. You chose to go with narration going along with that type of set, and it is really interesting. I am quite enjoying it, so I can't wait to see more of this. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.